You're tuning in to the J Blast Network. Oh yeah, welcome to the next level. You know, Sonic has always had a great transition into 3D. With the release of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 on the Dreamcast, and their subsequent re-releases on the GameCube, these two titles would single-handedly bring in a new generation of Sonic fans, including me, that would stick with the franchise to this very day. Throughout that time, Sonic has evolved in many different and unique ways. One could say that was one of the appeals of Sonic. It was always changing, always moving forward, and even when it slowed down a bit, there was always enough speed to keep it going. But after many extreme adventures, Sega and Sonic Team would decide to lay off a bit on the intensity. As cool as time travel, dimensional travel, hoverboards, the Arabian Nights, medieval times, and the Warhol could be, some might say they overdid it a bit. In came Sonic Colors in 2010, a game meant to chill on all that variety, at least in gameplay. Sticking to only having Sonic playable and keeping the daytime formula that Sonic Unleashed established, Sonic Colors would aim to streamline Sonic's gameplay by making only him the focus. However, there would be a gimmick that would enhance Sonic's abilities. These would be the Wisp, alien critters that would enhance Sonic's abilities temporarily by collecting them. The story would not be as chaotic as previous titles and would show Eggman up to another scheme, dragging in alien planets and a whole alien race for his amusement park, all in an effort to bring in good fate from his past actions. Yeah, right. We all know what it is. With a more simple focus, Sonic Colors was released to critical success back in 2010, with some even stating it was the best 3D Sonic game of all time. And for years, that success stayed and would be the catalyst for the remaster today, known as Sonic Colors Ultimate. Everything seems to work out right, but why is it that I feel that something was missing? Not from the remaster, but from the game as a whole. Why and what is it that would make someone second guess what should have been a success for everyone? And why is it that even with this remaster, I feel that Sonic Colors is severely lacking compared to its previous titles? Well, that's what this video is for. Hi, I'm Jay. You're tuning into the J Blast Network, and we take a look and discover the fun, flaws, and missed opportunities of Sonic Colors Ultimate. Now, since this is a remaster and I haven't covered this game before, I'm going to first talk about the game itself, then talk about how well it holds up as a remaster. Sonic Colors aims to capture the boost gameplay from Sonic Unleashed while establishing the Wisp to help enhance Sonic's abilities. So while the idea is the same, there are still some differences from the previous generation of the stages. One thing that must be taken into account is that this was originally a Wii game, and as such, with the main control scheme of the Wii not having the same amount of buttons as the Xbox 360 or PS3 controllers, Sonic Colors would split some of its boost mechanics to certain sections. For instance, sidestepping and drift are affected by this, getting their control schemes added in these sections, which instead of using triggers and bumpers, you'll be using analog stick and the face buttons. This doesn't really translate well if you're not using a Wii remote or a GameCube controller, but you can change these controls in the settings. In general, Sonic controls were a bit neutered from Unleashed. He's not as fast and he's more restricted, but he's easier to navigate. This would have some consequences, especially in a 3D environment, but the level design accommodates for this. Though this also creates another problem which I'll discuss later. Sonic also has a double jump, which is mostly used to assure your footing on the platform and boost you up in height a bit. Other than that, Sonic controls remain the same, but the real game changer here are the Wisp. These alien critters give Sonic abilities like Laser, which allows Sonic to speed by in the air and ricochet off objects. Drill, which allows you to dig and travel underground. Rocket, which sends Sonic high in the sky and puts you in a free fall above the level. Spikes, which brings back the spin dash and allows you to stick to walls. Hover, which allows Sonic to fly and use the light ring dash. Cube, which can create cube platforms out of special rings and destroy certain blocks. And Frenzy, which turns Sonic into a monster that eats everything around him. As you can see, most of these powers belong to a character from the past or an ability that Sonic had, which is kind of the point since you only play as Sonic in this game. But sometimes I can't help but feeling I'd rather have those other playable characters instead, or just have access to those abilities without the use of the Wisp. Most are useful, but some are very boring or lame to use, like Cube, which always gets paired with some of the most boring level design in the game. Hover is fine if not a bit slow, but it's really carried by having the light ring dash with it. Frenzy really is just a screen clearer for obstacles and enemies. The abilities of Laser, Drill, Rocket, and Spikes I feel enhance the levels, giving fun ways to reach new areas compared to the other Wisp powers. These guys help, but I would not say that they're integral to Sonic's control or gameplay. They are definitely a gimmick, but they work for this game and don't compromise the main gameplay. However, what does compromise it are the levels, which we'll talk about that later. As for the story, I'm going to keep it brief because, well, the game keeps it brief. You have to understand that they wanted to cut back from all the chaos that happened in the previous stories, which is a good or bad thing depending on who you are. Personally, I love how those older stories were. It made Sonic look cool, but this one here is not bad either. Before we get into that, we have to talk about the voice act. This was the first time Roger Craig Smith voiced Sonic, and I remember being thrown off as a kid because the voice was so different compared to the previous ones. Jason and Ryan had their style, but they still sound similar, keeping consistency with the character. However, Roger has a more snarky take similar to how Sonic was in the cartoons when he was voiced by Jaleel White. I think Roger does well for the first game, and although I have my preferences, I can still acknowledge when a voice is done well. Tails also had change in VA, and for the better, as Cake Higgins actually makes him sound like a smart young boy and not some whiny one like some of the original actors. And Eggman, as always, steals the show. Mike Pollock does a really good job of balancing the character's goofiness and threatening undertones, which is probably why he was kept, though you won't hear much of the latter here. You see, Color's story is a simple plot. Eggman builds an amusement park as an apology for his previous actions. However, we all know there's a grander scheme. So Sonic and Tails visit the park only to find Yacker and the Wisp, who are being abused and used as their energy source of Eggman's park. Kinda like how the animals or flickies were used in the past to power his machines. So it's up to Sonic and Tails, and really just Sonic, as Tails sits back and does nothing. A theme that started with Unleash, but really got his boost here, to stop Eggman's plans. Other than that, nothing really happens. The tone of the story was to be simple and comedic. Sonic will run into Eggman and have banter, then fight a boss, or just have banter with a boss. Simple, this story succeeds, but comedic is another story. I think when it comes to the banter between Sonic and Eggman, it works, even if they really want you to know a joke was made.
Since the boss said nothing will stop me, and Sonic here is going to stop him, it's like the boss was calling Sonic nothing.
Great! I thought nobody would get that.
But when Sonic is alone, the writing hits its lowest. So I get that they wanted him to have the attitude and snarkiness he had before, which is not a problem. The issue is how they write it. Before some boss fight, Sonic will banter with the boss in the cutscene. Not really an issue, but it's how it's handled. This game really, and I mean really, wants you to know that a joke happened, because when one is said, there is either a pause or someone explaining what the joke is. The banter would work if maybe Eggman was talking back through a mic, or there wasn't a pause between him and the boss talking.
Did somebody here order a clobbering? Are you sure? It says somebody ordered an extra large clobbering topped with everything. Okay. Tell you what, I can't take this thing back, so I'll give you an extra large clobbering for nothing.
These jokes make some cutscenes a slog to go through. And even as a kid, I just wanted the fight to start and for the characters to shut up. Though this one will always land the mark.
Eggman, I am going to save this planet, and I am going to free these aliens. No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me.
Now that's a classic. What I'm trying to get at is that even for the tone they were going for, it feels pretty mediocre in execution and makes Sonic look more lame than cool. There's also this serious part of the story where Eggman is using the Wisp energy to mind control people, in which he mind controls Tails for a bit to show this off. He wants to use it to put the whole planet under his control, which seems like a serious threat, but is barely focused on and feels like fake tension being built up because they want to have some big moment before the final fight. A great example of this is this cutscene where it seems that the Wisp are in danger.
Lost you for a second. Did you find anything interesting? Look at all of them. He's captured thousands of aliens.
Don't worry, we'll get him out.
Sonic, I haven't seen Yacker for a while.
You'll have to excuse me, buddy. I have a generator to shut down.
Keep in mind, there is no cutscene showing something happened to Yacker before or after this, and this feels so forced and out of place for a story like this. I'm not saying it's bad because it's a serious moment, I'm saying it's bad because of how it's written. Just having one cutscene and payoff for this would have made it much better than creating some fake tension. Like, who cares at this point? We were just briefly told and not shown any issue with this. And in the end, Sonic beats Eggman and gets saved by the Wisp from the fallout, and everything is fine. Again, I want to reiterate that the story being simple is not the problem here. That's fine to go with, but I wish what was here was better. It didn't even need any dark elements to be good. It's not awful or bad, but it's definitely somewhere in the middle. Good concept, poor execution, which can be said for this next section. Sonic Colors' major flaw has to be its levels, more so its level design. I want to start out with the good though, because there's a lot here to appreciate. First off, this was the last Sonic game to feature all fully original levels, which is kind of sad since that was like 11 years ago. But these are some of the best environments in the entire series. I'd compare most of these to Sonic CD. By the way, did you notice that the planet chains are similar to the ones used in that game? Pretty cool, huh? Don't know where Eggman gets these chains from though, but that's not the only thing that reminds me of Sonic CD. It's the vibrant, vast, and beautiful environments in these levels. Tropical Resort is a great introduction to this planet-themed adventure, mixing a tropical resort theme with a space background instead of a beach, and creates a great interstellar vibe. Sweet Mountain is a planet full of desserts that's sure to give you a sweet tooth or just make you hungry before you leave. Starlight Carnival turns a battleship armada similar to the Egg Fleet into a light show with a neon road that travels around the ships. It's the most visually stunning of all the planets. Planet Wisp, my favorite planet, is the home world of the Wisp that's being mechanized by Eggman's factory. You get a nice blend of nature and machinery which both create a more beautiful and calm background than either of the two could alone. Aquarium Park is the water level and is a water park with a feudal Japan setting. The aesthetic alone makes it one of the best water levels in the series, along with blending the water elements with Japanese temples. You can also infinite jump underwater, which is something that would be only in this game and not put in any other game after. Kind of makes those sections easier and more tolerable, which is fine with me. Asteroid Coaster is the last full zone and is a giant roller coaster in an asteroid field, with some bases being in the asteroids. It's one of the coolest final zones in the Sonic game for its darker aesthetic alone. It reminds me of some of the final space levels in the previous games, plus you get to ride this sick ass roller coaster. You can tell the devs were having fun getting creative with the planet's themes and locations. I just wish they were as creative with the level design. See, that's where it becomes a monkey's paw. Colors is already a short game, but it would have been even shorter if they did not split the levels up. From what we know, levels were originally going to have 2 or 3 long acts, which is fine, but every planet here has 6 acts. That seems good on paper, and it could be good in execution, but what ends up happening is that half of these acts in the planet are the same area you've already been to, only with some boring gimmick or some of them cut short completely. This wouldn't be a big deal if it was only like 2 levels, but it's about half of the levels in the game, half of the levels in each planet, but more than half for Starlight Carnival that are like this. I think what made Sonic levels work was its flow. Sonic was always as what I describe as linear openness. This mostly applies to the 3D games. Basically, you're on a linear path, but unlike something like Crash Bandicoot, you have more open sections. And a big incentive to playing these games was replaying the levels to perfect them to the point of consistent movement. And if you knew how to go through these levels, you would never stop or slow down even when platforming. And this is what made 3D Sonic so fun. It's been like that since the original games, even if there was more exploration. However, those short levels and colors all rely on some gimmick, and maybe a Wisp power-up is used for it. This involves such intriguing gameplay such as bouncing on a spring while auto-scrolling, or stepping on some switches to move a platform, or stepping on switches to make a hazard move. All of this involves waiting on the game and cuts off the flow of progressing through the level. Stopping or slowing down is not a bad thing, but it's what you do when these things happen. Not to mention the levels where they just throw blocks together in an area you already been to and call it a stage. Starlight Carnival being the worst of this, as most of its acts revolve around these gimmicks. Again, I wouldn't complain if it wasn't so frequent. And it's more than just bad pacing because it kills the one thing that stood out in these games: the adventure or exploration. Even in the linear levels in the previous titles, it felt like you were going somewhere. Take something like Speed Highway for example, where you start out on skyscrapers and end up in a grounded downtown. Levels told stories and it made them interesting to play through. Sonic Colors does have this in its main levels, but too many of its levels are filled with this bland and boring level design. It does the thing where we created a gimmick and use this gimmick, which on paper sounds good, but when the gimmick is not fun to begin with, it doesn't work, and Sonic always stood out from that honestly bland method of level design. So what about the main levels? Well, there are usually 3 depending on the stage, with Starlight Carnival only having 2. These levels actually have the adventure feel, and you see the progression on where you're going. Take one of my favorites, Planet Whiz Act 1 for example. It starts out in the forest of the planet, but as we continue to go through the stage, you get deeper and deeper into the factory. This is continued in Act 4, and then continued in Act 6, each one going through different sections of the factory, with some small sections of nature. You get to see the damage being done to the planet. Another example is Sweet Mountain, where Act 2 starts immediately where Act 1 ends. Even Starlight Carnival has one of the best platforming sections in the game in Act 5, where after navigating through the spaceships, you have to climb this giant tower using hover. These make levels feel like worlds. Part of the greatness of Sonic's levels is that they hide that it's a game level. It gets players immersed in the world and keeps them coming back. When Colors does this, it is at its best. It's not as good as Unleashed or Generations daytime stages, mostly because they separate 3D and 2D by spectacle and platforming, with 3D being spectacle and 2D being platforming. They did this in the previous levels, but it's way more prevalent here. I think a nice blend of both would have been better, but what is here does work when you're not automated, like in the Starlight Carnival level where you're running on the neon road. It looks really cool, but I mean, you can put down the controller and still win the game. It's here where I have the most fun with Colors, and when replaying the game, I play these levels only and I have a good time. Honestly, if they cut the filler, it would make the game much better, even if it was shorter, because going through those levels ruined the pace of the game. However, there is one redeeming quality of all the levels, and that is the red rings. Each level holds 5 red rings that you have to find. Some are hidden behind puzzles. You have to explore and find them, and the wisp abilities are put to the test. And it's honestly the best they're utilized in the game. Even some of the filler levels improve when you search for the red rings, though some just give you the rings with no challenge at all, and are still short, so that doesn't really help. I feel this is the strength of the Wisp powers and of Colors in general. You use the Wisp in many different and creative ways to collect the rings. It's too bad that most will not see this, as most will not collect all the red rings since they're optional, and you really only have access to get all of them once you reach Asteroid Coaster, the last full level, as you unlock Wisp by different planets. Though it does make sense to add replay value after a playthrough, and it did make the game more enjoyable from collecting them. Overall, Colors levels still leave much more to desire. I wouldn't say half of the game is like this, since more playtime is spent in the main levels, but if you go by the number of acts alone, it barely outnumbers those main acts, which is unfortunate because level design is the most important thing in the platformer, besides movement. I mean, what is the point of that movement if levels just aren't designed around it or enhance it, and Colors falls short in this department? I think that's the biggest problem with the game. Why, as a kid, I always felt something was missing or something was off after playing. Hell, I still feel this way today, and not helping this are these bosses. Bosses in this game are either way too easy or boring, and they repeat themselves. The worst of these being the Ferris wheel boss, who you can beat in like 5 seconds with one Wisp attack. Holy shit, this guy makes Sonic see these bosses look deadly. The second one you fight is a pirate captain on a ship, which is the most interesting as you have to knock the ship down to reach him. A pretty good boss fight. Then the last one is a giant ship you fight on a highway, which is very similar to the Eggman boss fights from Unleashed. Both of these two bosses can take more damage by Wisp, but it's not an instant kill. There's an actual fight. I just wish they weren't repeated. Their themes work for the first planet they appear in, but not the next one. And look, I'm not even gonna cap to you. Most Sonic bosses are jokes. Only a few really stand out as good fights, so I'm not too hung up on that. But it's the repeat fights that make this feel more dragged out. You know, that's a good word to describe this game. Dragged out, or having too much padding. That's what some of these problems feel like. Having 3 bosses would be fine. Not every level needed one. As for the final boss, well, I should talk about the final area as a whole. Terminal Velocity. This level is awesome. It's a final gauntlet as you run down the space station, fighting off and avoiding robots. You'll then fight the final boss, the Mega Wisp, which use all your Wisp powers against you. That's genius, actually. and as you beat him, you gain each type of wisp back. It's a great final boss, so good that they will repeat the same battle again for later Sonic games, except much worse. The most iconic part is the ending.
Unlimited colors! Final color flash!
Iconic, ain't it? Sonic then has to outrun a black hole created by the park's destruction, which is a great ending set piece for Sonic is saved by the Wisp, ending the game. Now, some of you fans might be asking, where's Super Sonic? Well, he might have been able to outrun that black hole if he had Super Sonic, and he might be able to do that if the writers knew what it was when writing it. Yeah, they got new writers for this game, and it showed they were new. They did a decent job for what they had, but it could have been much better if they knew more about the series. However, Super Sonic isn't fully gone. The writers may have forgotten him, but the developers didn't. For the first time in a 3D Sonic game, Super Sonic is playable and not just restricted to boss fights. You gotta remember, at the time, the last game that did this was Sonic 3K. Not even the 2D handheld games let you play as Super Sonic in normal levels. In order to unlock it, you have to collect all red rings, which gives you access to the levels in the Sonic Simulator. The Sonic Simulator is like the special stages of the game. They play like some of the standard levels, but they take place in this virtual void. This also doubles as the multiplayer. I don't have footage of it right now, but when I play the multiplayer with friends, we'd always just go back to the older titles with multiplayer there, because this one's it's kind of lame. Still, if you have friends, it does help deal with the busy work with those levels, which is what those levels feel like. Once completing all the levels, you get access to Super Sonic, and I'm glad that it's here, but it's not as good as it would seem. First off, you're probably not going to get them on the level until near the end because of how short they are. When you activate Super Sonic in the settings, you lose the ability to use the Wisp, even if you're not using Super Sonic, but the level design does accommodate for it. But some of them feel worse without them, and again, you may not even get Super Sonic on most levels until the end. Super Sonic just boosts a bit faster and is invincible. And I don't know, he doesn't feel as powerful as he was in the older titles, but the novelty of having him here is great. Just a little underwhelming. A running theme here, huh? There's also a challenge mode where you can play through all the levels with no breaks and your time is recorded. This is something I think all Sonic games should have. It's a great way to see how fast you can speedrun the game. I'll tell you one thing though that doesn't miss, and it's that Otani killed it with the original soundtrack. With this game, all the tracks not only sound good, but fit the atmosphere of the levels as well. Check it out. Editor's notes here. I actually forgot to mention Reach for the Stars in the original script, so I'm going to mention it here. Reach for the Stars is an amazing song. It's considered one of Sonic's many themes, and I was glad that it was remixed for this game. So I'm going to play both versions. Cash did a great job for this song, and it does sound like a space adventure type song for Sonic. And Otani's band did an amazing job remixing, so check this out along with the rest of the music. And if you want to hear more, you gotta look up for yourself. Speak for Your Heart is good too, but it always felt kind of awkward, and I'm not sitting through those credits to listen to it. It's definitely not as good as Reach for the Stars, but it's still a good song too. Check them out. pretty much it for the original game. I'll go over my final thoughts when we talk about the changes in the remaster. So, how does Sonic Colors do as a remaster? Well, unfortunately, it has a lot of issues, but there are many good additions that were added. To start with, Tails is added in gameplay, not playable sadly, but he can rescue you from a fall and put you back on the platform you fell off of, instead of going back to the checkpoint. The life system in general has been changed. No longer are there lives, you can die as much as you want, and you can collect Tails coins to help you if you fall. When you run out, you just spawn back at the checkpoint. All this really does is make the game easier, but they implemented Tails into it, which already makes the game 10 times better. He actually does something now. Next, there are the park tokens, which you can collect in every level. These tokens let you buy customization items in the new shop. You can change Sonic's shoes, gloves, aura, and boost color. There are also many icons for different Sega series. Some I'm very surprised are here, like freaking Clockwork Knight and some Phantasy Star characters. That's cool. Customization is a big addition new platformers are adding, so it's a smart idea to add it here. Just being able to change your costume adds another layer of replay value to the game. My favorite outfit is the fire ones. They remind me of Sonic and the Secret Rings, the fire that Sonic had when he ran. Another mode that was added was Rival Rush, where you race Metal Sonic and select acts. These races can give you a good challenge and force you to learn the level because Metal Sonic is pretty fast. There's also a new Wisp power-up added called the Jade Wisp, which allows you to phase through certain objects. They didn't make new areas to use, however they just changed how you got one of the red rings or use elements of a stage that were already there. It feels shoehorned in, but that's what happens when you add a new mechanic and don't add new stages for that new mechanic. But at least the power-up itself is fun to use. Those all seem like great additions, huh? So what could be wrong with this remaster? See, it all comes down to technical issues with the game. Graphics, for instance, it does keep the original style colors, but it doesn't even look better in Generations. It just looks a bit upscale, which doesn't make it look awful. I just think it could look better. However, they were able to keep the original art style and a texture style, and that's more than some other remasters can say. What is a problem though is this bloom. At first it didn't bother me, but the more I play, the more I notice it. It varies depending on the stage, with Tropical Resort and Starlight Carnival having the worst of it, but the game really did not need this added. It would look fine without it. It's just some smaller issues with the graphics, but bigger issues arise when it comes to the glitches. Now I'm not gonna lie and say that I got all these glitches or the game was unplayable at points, because it wasn't, at least for me, but there were many times where things that had no issue in the original version of the game had issues here. There are multiple audio issues, the Wisp music sometimes not playing, rendering issues with tubes used for the drill wisp are not being rendered correctly. There's more technical issues with the game sometimes freezing at certain points and unfreezing, ruining the pace of the gameplay, along with layering issues for certain enemies when drilling. There are lighting issues with the fog flickering in the background of certain stages. There are loading issues with some levels not placing Sonic in the right animation before it starts, and in general some loading screens take longer than the original game, along with some of them bugging out. All of this is just sad. This was supposed to be an easy remaster, and these are some pretty big and noticeable problems. It should have been fixed. These aren't some one-off occurrences. These happens constantly during the playthrough. And that's not to mention the collision glitches where you may die out of your own control. I don't understand how the game could release like this. The original never had these issues, and this isn't even the worst of it. I don't have the Switch version, but there is a good reason for it. You see, every other version runs at 60 FPS on other consoles, but for some reason the Switch can only run it at 30 FPS. What? I don't even want to hear that the Switch is too weak, because we have Wii U ports that run better than on that system, and we have Wii games like Skyward Sword that run better at 60 FPS on the Switch. How hard is it? That's not even the worst part with this version, as swapping from multiple planets will cause the game's memory to leak on all versions and can cause some game-breaking bugs on the Switch version specifically. I'll show you some footage, but I will warn those who are susceptible to seizures, please skip over it. I have a timestamp for it. Yeah, it's that bad. How in the world they managed to F up this remaster so hard? I mean, you can play the game on Dolphin at 60 FPS and have a better experience, even with the glitches that come with the FPS boost on there. Now, there was a patch release that fixed the Switch issue, but from playing it, many more of the issues still reside. Hell, not even one stage into the new patch, the game crashed. Yeah, that was another issue. Game crashes. And sometimes people's games would crash and delete their save file. And this is on the PS5 version, the version I'm playing. Jesus Christ, man. Look, I know there's a lot of work when it comes to game development. Hell, I've been working on my own games myself, but there's just no way these bugs should have been in this game in the first place, especially that memory leak. That one could actually hurt people. Even the new additions just barely put some assets together, like Metal Sonic's model will look off at times, with his boost fire not even being in the right direction in certain animations. And the animation for the Jade Whip looks like they're just moving a model in Unity. All of these problems really make you question how much of a remaster this game really is. I'm just disappointed because we haven't had Sonic games in like a couple of years, and this remaster that should have been easy work is riddled with bugs and feels so unpolished. Many people loved Colors and see it one of their favorite games, and this state of the remaster is just a freaking disgrace. I don't know, Sega just seems to be getting everything right but Sonic in these past 5 years. It's just disappointing to see. At least the remastered music sounds good, but you can't even toggle a switch to turn it on or off. The first 3 acts of a stage will have the remastered music, and the second 3 acts of a stage will have the original music. But some of the remastered music doesn't hit as good as the original music, so it would have been nice to have that switch on and off. Here's some of the remastered music for you to listen. With everything being said, does Colors live up to the initial hype and praise? And was the remaster even worth it? As for the remaster, I think it was good to get this out on more consoles. It's shocking to me still, but it's been 11 years since the game dropped. I was in middle school at the time and just started it, and now I've graduated college and I've started working. So much has happened since then, but this game still feels recent. I kinda have that same feeling for Unleashed and Generations. I don't know, the Wii still feels current, even though production is shut down. But it's been 2 generations of consoles since then, so it made sense to port it. But in the state it's in, it's very hard to recommend new players. I really hate talking bad about Sonic games because I like a majority of them, even with the flaws in some of them. But some of these issues are unacceptable for a re-release. Still, patches are coming, but the game should not have these issues on release, especially those Seizure ones. If you want it now, I guess it's okay to still get Colors. It's really just the same game with more content, but it comes with those bugs too. If you're not that much of a Sonic fan though, I'd wait for a sale, or at least all those bugs are patched. Without the bugs, it's a decent remaster with some slight issues, but I do feel it's better than the original. As for Colors itself, I always had a hard time finding out why this game was good but felt like something was missing, like something was off. At first it was too much 2D, then it became the simple scope was holding it back. But honestly, none of those are the real problem with Colors. It's in its design choices. Even in its best levels, the game feels very simple compared to its previous levels, and at its worst it relies on gimmicks. Levels are like the second most important thing, if not evenly as important when it comes to a Sonic game. Hell, any platformer. And when the level design is average at best, it doesn't give that much room for the mechanics or the environments level to stand out. Now, the environments are very memorable, but for the level design itself, many of it is just forgettable, and that's worse than being bad levels. Hey, at least I can rage at Metropolis. Still, when the level design does work, the game becomes fun. I do like this game. It just feels held back in the wrong areas, and not just the story either. In fact, as stated, that's not even the biggest problem with Colors. They would improve the level design Generations, but went right back to Color's philosophy in the worst way when forces dropped. Wait, but that's another story, another video. However, it did make me look back at this game more and gave me a better understanding of what was wrong with it. Not every Sonic game needed to set a standard or be ambitious or change the game, but they do need to stand out. Colors just feels good in a franchise that's always was great. Simplicity really hurt this game. If they just kept the level design style of Unleashed or did what they did for Generations, this could be more of a great Sonic game, but it's just good. It does the right things for sure, but how much more entertaining is that compared to the previous titles? The worlds themselves are memorable, the soundtrack is memorable, hell, even some of the stupid jokes in the story are memorable, but the majority of the level design is not. It just doesn't have the same impact as those previous titles, at least to me. I've seen many new fans brought in by this game, and as an introduction, it does a good job at it. Again, despite my criticism, I still think Sonic Colors is a good game. I just never thought of it as the best or go back to it as often as other titles because of these issues. In many ways, it feels like a first game in its style, even though it's the second Boost Formula game. But even looking at it like that, Sonic 1 had more memorable level design, and that game had a similar split problem like here. But overall, Sonic Colors is good, but that's all I can say, and that's really bad when it comes to this franchise. I wish there was more being offered. I wish they put a bit more into the game to make it as great as the series could be. Alright guys, thanks for watching the video. I hope you guys like it. If you like the content on the channel, there's more on the way. Make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And Sega, if you're watching this video, do me a favor. Please remaster or re-release Unleashed at 60 FPS. And please leave the bug out of this remaster. Guys, I'm a big Sonic fan if you didn't know, if you're watching this. I'm going to cover some more Sonic games on this channel, but as of right now, I'm working on other titles. But I did want to get this video out since Colors was a new game that dropped, and I do want to be relevant when it comes to those new Sonic titles dropping. And hopefully you guys are able to enjoy the game as much as I did when I was younger, even though I still have problems with it, as I said in this video, because that's the whole point of these remasters, for new people to enjoy this game. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how I feel. I'm glad that people are happy with this game, which a lot of people are, and that's a good thing that they're able to enjoy it. And my main issue was just that these glitches are something that's hindering people from enjoying it as much as I did, or even coming to conclusions that I did in the first place. But again, thank you guys for watching the video. Like and subscribe if you like the content. I'm gonna see you in the next one. This is the J Blast Network signing out. And don't forget, you gotta believe.